Hey, it's Coach Jody here, and as always, I am excited to be here with you on the couch. I'm back on this couch this week. I've been traveling around a little bit, and this is episode number 13 of On the Couch with me. And so for today in particular, I want to speak to you about um, the one thing or the first thing I want to know at every session. And this is true whether it's for a mental coaching client or a cricket coaching client, that I believe this one thing will, if you start doing this, right, it'll change your session completely, that you have with the people that you work with. And so before I get into that, I want to share two ideas, just that sort of leads me into that and why I do that at every session. And so the first thing is that I have a core belief about coaching, that coaching is not about me. It's not about my knowledge, it's not about my experience, it's not about my skills, it's not about anything that I can really do in that session to be miraculous or wonderful. It's more about the person that stands in front of me or sits in front of me, and it's all about them. And I suppose my thinking around that sits around this core question of who knows best, right? Do I really know best for a cricketer? You know, whether it's about their skills or about the inner game and their inner state. I really don't think that I do. I'm not in their shoes. I don't live their life. I don't have their challenges. I don't have their experiences. And so coaching cannot be about me because it's because they know best, right? They know best when they go out onto the field what they struggle with, what they feel comfortable with, what they feel good at. They know best, how they overcome challenges. They know their thoughts and their inner world better than I do. Even if they're not aware of it, I come from a place that says they know best, right? And so because of that, the first thing I want to know in every session is what they want. And so I ask that question in many different ways. I would ask, what do you want to practice today? What do you want to get better at today? To mental coaching clients, I would often ask, so what is so important in your life that we have to sit down and have this conversation right now? And so it's really just figuring out with the player initially, and this process takes 2 to 3 minutes at times. Sometimes it can take longer, just to figure out what this session is actually going to be about. What is it that we are committing our time together here to make sure that when you leave here, you will have improved, get better at, understand better, or maybe have changed completely. And so I believe that if you approach a session like that session will, the first thing that you will definitely gain is an intention, right? So, if you have an intention for something, then a lot of other things start falling in place. But if there's no intention, it's easy to drift through your session. It's easy to kind of start somewhere, end up somewhere else. And to me, it just leaves players and human beings confused about what actually just happened, right? It could be a train wreck. I think I've spoken about this a lot of times before, or on one or two other videos, that I often see coaches and they're working with a cricketer, and the bowler will be running up and bowling, and after the first ball they'll talk to them about their arm, after the second ball they'll talk to them about their head, after the third ball they'll talk to them about their hips and their feet, after the fourth ball they'll talk to them about making sure they land the ball in a place. And so that's, in my mind, that's just too many, right? If our intention is going to be to just focus on your front arm in this session, by the end of this session, if you're better at that, will that serve your cricket? Yes, it will. Then off we go. And so for one whole hour or 30 minutes or however long you're doing that, you can focus on getting better at that. And I suppose this is like a core thing about my coaching, is that I always say to new cricketers that when you come to coaching with me, all I'm going to do is give you one thing each week, and if you get better at that one thing in 6 months' time, how good will you be? In 3 years' time, how good will you be? If every week we just make sure you master one little thing about your game, in 10 years' time, imagine how good you can be, right? And so That's the sort of stuff that gets me really excited, is helping players just understand that we're practicing one thing at a time. We get better at that and better at the next and better at the next and better at the next. And that's why coaching isn't about me, it's about the player. And so when I ask that question, often what cricketers will present is like something very general or a little bit vague, right? So they might say something like, oh, I want to practice my cover drive. And so I can see that as a coach, we can jump onto that very quickly and go, oh yeah, I know in this kid's cover drive, he falls over, he loses balance. So what I would normally then follow that question up with, if they give me something vague, is, okay, cool, so you want to practice your cover drive. What about your cover drive do you want to practice? And they might say something like, I actually want to hit the gaps a little bit better. I find that when I hit the shot that, I hit the fielders a lot. Oh, well, it's great. All of a sudden, as a coach, my creative juices jumps into flow. So I might say something like, do you want me to set a little field for you? Can we play a little game with this? And now we're up and running, and we've created a nice little session around something that the player actually wants to get better at. And so they leave the session at the end of the day feeling like, that was worthwhile. Where I could create a session like that as a coach and, all around this fancy game, hitting gaps on the cover drive, and what they really wanted to work on was their defense. And so they will leave the session not feeling that great because they didn't get the value that they wanted out of it. So I have 2 more points to make on this. So the next one is age, right? So a lot of the time when I speak to coaches about this, they go, you know what, but what if a 7-year-old drives there? They don't know anything about the game. So firstly, that's an assumption that 7-year-olds don't know much about the game. Believe me, I've worked with some 7-year-olds who know quite a lot. They grew up in a family where the dad plays cricket and the older brothers play cricket. And so they're 7 and they know where mid-off is and cover is, and they got this game wired, right? Maybe, yes, they don't know everything, but they know more than you would assume a 7-year-old would know. In the same way, a 13-year-old could walk into your net and they know diddly squat about the game. So what do we do with players when they don't know much? If you ask them, so what do you want to practice today? And they go, I don't know, actually. That's a great place and a great opportunity for you as a coach to start teaching them to understand, firstly, the idea of knowing what they want out of the session. But secondly, that's also the opportunity where you can then throw in a little bit of your stuff to say, okay, cool, let's start somewhere. Let's, do you know stuff about cricket? So you inquire a little bit more about what do they know, what don't they know. So we're going to do bowling, right? So what do you actually know about bowling? Do you know the different parts of a bowling action? No, okay, cool, right? So if they don't know that, maybe that's a good place to start teaching them from. Maybe you're the kind of coach that builds stuff from the back up. Your coaching strategy to me is not as important as just figuring out with a player what they know, what they don't know, and where you can go with a session, with them. What is the first thing that you can then teach them or coach them, because you know that they don't know, right? And so once you've established that, then that mind of theirs will be so open for any little bit of information that you throw in there, because you've almost sort of set it up that you have their permission to teach them things because they actually don't know. And that just goes, to me, it goes way beyond just assuming that they don't know and just throwing a bunch of stuff at them, and actually all the stuff you throw at them, they already know. So inquire a little bit more when you might assume that they don't know. Just figure out what they really don't know. And so then the last thing that normally gets asked of me around this topic is, but Jody, what if I coach a team, right? I've got a plan, like my team's coaching session. And so I think with teams, it's a great opportunity to get them together and say, right, boys, or girls, what do you want to practice today? And you spend 10 minutes of your practice session with your team, figuring out exactly what you're going to do on that day and what you want them to get better at, or not you, what they want to really get better at. And so you start matching batters with bowlers who are wanting to work on similar things. And I just feel, even as a team, right, if the team knows that there's maybe a certain thing, let's say the team can't bat through 50 overs, right? Let's say that's something that happens for your team. And you wanting to solve that. Don't you think it would be better to involve them in creating the solution for the 50 over, batting through 15 over problem than you just rocking up and giving them all the solutions, right? After all, we want to create thinking cricketers. We want to create cricketers who can go onto a field and think for themselves. But if we don't set up our practices to get them to do that, then they will never learn that skill. So yeah, I think that's kind of my thoughts on all of this at this point in time. As always, I would greatly appreciate it if you found any value out of this video, that you share it. I'd also greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to my YouTube page. And if you want to, please tag a mate in the comments below, whether it's here on YouTube or on Facebook or Instagram. Tag somebody that can go find this video if it will serve them in any way. And then lastly, have a great day as always. Thank you.